Okay, again, good morning to one and all. Participants, I welcome you to the third session of this online Atal FDP on AI and ML. Uh, for this session, we have Mr. Arunjit Chaudhary, CEO of Enterprise Business Training Solutions. I have already shared his profile uh, in the group. So formally, let me say that he has experience in providing teaching assistance to students in latest trends in IT, and he has uh, vast experience in handling various technology projects across USA, Europe, Asia Pacific. He worked in different capabilities as project manager, quality manager, program manager, etc. We are fortunate to have him with us today. Sir, on behalf of Department of Production Engineering, VSC Sufti Burla, Odisha, and all the participants, I welcome you to this particular session, and I'm leaving it to you. I request you to start the session. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the introduction and good morning to all of you in this who has joined this session. And so let me just share my screen first. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. So I just wanted to show the PowerPoint presentation and the chat box side by side so that, if somebody is asking questions, I can instantly have a look. But my sincere request to all is that if you have any questions at any point of time, please unmute and speak. That would be a preferred option. And because many a times while I'm getting engrossed in this presentation, I may lose out on the chat box. So my request to all of you to please stop me at any point of time. That's number one. A few things again I want to ask before I start. Not ask, tell is let's make this session very collaborative. Let it not be a one way traffic. And I would urge every one of you to participate and contribute to whatever extent you can. Because I personally feel that my students, whether they are faculties or they are normal college students, they have some amount of knowledge which can surely be shared across the group. So the objective here is not only to for me to impart whatever little I know, but at the same time to get some knowledge from all you guys. So please share whatever new you have, whatever new you are learning, which will be beneficial for others in this session as well. Having said that, so I'll be covering two sessions today and tomorrow, same time, essentially talking about machine learning and some of the models, popular models which are used today in the industry. I'll be talking about AI and machine learning, some of the applications in machine learning types. My focus today is going to be on supervised learning today and tomorrow, where I'll be talking about various types of models within supervised model. And within that, I'm going to show few hands-on sessions on linear regression, which will comprise of univariate and multivariate regression. I'm also going to touch upon polynomial regression, then logistic regression, decision trees, and random forest. So this is what I'm going to cover over the next 2 days, and I'll be showing you Python scripts and data sets for each of these examples. And I'll be also sharing the PPT and this with all of you. So please don't note down anything in your paper. Just focus on the presentation, what I'm doing, and we will all and I'm sure you'll all enjoy the sessions, right? Okay, so before I start, uh, with more details, I wanted to understand from all of you. I mean, most of you understand AI, so that is something which I will not get into. But I really wanted to understand or get some insights from you. Or what do you interpret by machine learning? Anybody, please? What is your interpretation of machine learning?
Machine will learn to do specific activity depending on the past experience or some patterns.
Specific activity based on past experience or patterns. Very good. You have used a very right word called patterns. Very nice. Okay. Anybody else?
Machine learns based upon number of inputs, sir. As the input increases, machine learn automatically and give some models.
Input increases, machine gives. You are saying if I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, if input increases, the machine gives better results. Is my interpretation correct? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, fine. So let me give an example which will illustrate a very simple example. So I am, for example, the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline, and GlaxoSmithKline is one of the big pharma companies. And this pharma company has launched a new drug for COVID. I'm just giving an example or for any reasons. And maybe it has launched a product around 2 months back. And the CEO has realized that there has been a lot of complaints about this product which has been launched, right? So when people have complained, there could be multiple ways of complaining. Okay. Before that, can somebody tell me what is a structured data and unstructured data? What is a structured data and what is the unstructured data? Yes, please. Anybody, please participate. I would request all of you to participate. Otherwise, not going to. Yeah.
Which is already pre-processed. The pre-processed data can be a structured data.
For example.
And where missing values, and in some data where the missing values are there, null values are there, means further pre-processing is required. So that is unstructured.
So you're saying in structured data, the data is pre-processed, while in unstructured data, the data is not pre-processed. Okay. Okay, this comes from a not pre-processed, but from a data perspective. Okay, when I say structured data, what do you mean by a structured data? One is not pre-processed is, I will not, okay, you may call it pre-processed, but that is from a machine learning perspective, I understand. But when you say structured data, is typically your data in tables. It's in a structured format, right? So you have your field attributes, you have the primary key, secondary key, you have a structured format in a database, in a relational database system where you capture all the data. Unstructured data could be anything where there is no format. It could be your social messages, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. It could be audio, video, visuals. All these are unstructured data, right? And so when I'm actually talking about a scenario where a person or the CEO of a company realized that there is he has understood there are people complaining about the product. So the various ways a customer can lodge a complaint is, one is he logs into the website and he enters his profile and the nature of the complaint. So this is a structured data, because whatever data is entering is in the form of certain fields, and that is going and hitting a database, right? Similarly, he can also call a call center guy and the call center guy will record his details like his profile, what was the nature of the complaint that he has lodged, and that also gets recorded in some form of a database. So this is more of a structured data. But imagine there are situations where there is a lot of messages, complaint coming through social media. For example, on Twitter, like somebody has talked about this product, complaining about the product. There are some people talking on WhatsApp with their peers. There are some people talking on Facebook, right? Now, all this information is very, very vital to the CEO. So he does not care from where the data source comes from, whether it's coming from a social network or it's coming from whatever the source of data. He needs to capture all this data. So what he wants to do, so obviously there are technologies available where you can capture all this data in a specific format. And then the need is how you can, as a CEO, I want to derive a pattern out of this data. So I have the data and I want to derive a pattern out of this data, which will tell me as to what is the population of people and what is probably the profile of the people who are making good or bad comments about the product. And depending on the profile or depending on the classification I do in terms of identifying what sort of people are complaining, about the product, or what sort of people are saying good about the product, I can take decisions as to whether I need to introduce another product, or I need to discontinue the product, or I need to bring about some changes in the product to take care of those issues which has been raised by the client. So the word I'm trying to emphasize, and I think one of the madam had already stopped, is how to derive the pattern out of the data. So when you talk of machine learning, the most and first important thing, the way I will put it, is that I need to have some input data. So essentially what I'm trying to do is, I have some data and I want a machine learning model to predict or to come out or to basically derive a pattern out of the data so that machine can take over the work of a human being and do a prediction, right? So first I have the input data. So in my input data will have a set of inputs, variables as inputs or input variables, and say one output. Have an output, right? Then what I do is I input my data to a machine. Okay. Please don't, please ignore my syntax. Let's focus on the contents. So I input my data into a machine and the machine will learn to experience. It's a very, very important word. The machine learns through experience. As one rightly said, as you get more and more, somebody had also said, more the data, better the prediction, better the, it's easier, it is able to do a pattern recognition much more with the more data you enter, which you feed into the machine. So the machine learns through experience, and based on that, it derives a pattern. It derives a pattern between the input and the output. It derives a pattern between the input and the output. Once it derives a pattern, it will be able to predict the output. It will be able to predict the output from a new set of input data. That means I have got a data, I train the machine is able to derive a pattern between the input and output. I take a new set of data, and with the new set of data, since my machine has been able to predict the pattern, has been able to derive a pattern, it will try to predict the output for a new set of input data. And this output should represent the actual data. predicted data should represent the output data or the actual data. So essentially, whatever data you had as input and output, those input data, you have done some pattern through the machine. And once you derive a pattern, you predict, and that prediction will help you to predict new set of data, and that new set of data, outcome of that output should be able to match the actual data. Does this definition make sense to all? Can I get a quick yes or no on the screen? If you have understood, please press yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So that is how I will define machine. And if I go back to my definition, the science of getting computers to learn and act, learning through experience over time by feeding data and information in the form of observations and real world interactions, right? So, and today machine learning has become a buzzword, though machine learning has been in practice maybe for ages now, maybe for quite some time. Okay. Now, how has the AI evolved? If I talk of AI evolution, we initially had something called an expert systems. Can somebody tell me what is an expert system? Anybody has heard about expert systems, which was way back in early 90s? And that is something which I learned when I was studying in National Center of Software, NCST, National Center of Software Technology, which was affiliated to Department of Atomic Energy. So anybody can tell me what is an expert system?
Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Basically, export system, what I understand, which works on a set of well-defined rules and very structured decision making can be done through export system, and it is normally used by the top level executives of the organization in a very routine kind of decisions. In that way, the export systems can be used to take the views from the exports, and it's absolutely based on certain rules.
Can you give me an example?
Can be, let's say, sales forecasting. Export systems can be used for sales forecasting. What should be the allocation for the budget allocation for the advertisement in order to achieve the sales target of so and so. So we can take the help of export system. Basing upon the trend data, we can get some results. This much should be allocated. For advertising expenses in order to achieve the sales target, so on so.
That's a good point. I mean, the way I will put it is, for example, if I'm in a healthcare industry,
right, sir.
When I go to a healthcare industry, I am a patient. I go to a doctor with some symptoms. And based on the symptoms, the doctor will do my diagnosis. He will ask me to do some tests. And based on the test, there's an outcome, which is maybe what is the problem. And accordingly, they will give you a prescription. Yeah, this is the typical set of rules you have, right? Now, if you were to document this in a program, saying that if this is the symptom, if this is the sort of diagnosis, this is the sort of prescription I can take. So I could write a big program with various if-else statements. Guys who are not technical, don't worry about it. I'm using very simple terms like if and else, so you'll be able to understand. So I could basically build a rule based on various types of symptoms. What is the sort of diagnosis and what is the sort of prescription can be proposed based on actual data. So once I would have built this rule, then I could essentially give some symptom as a parameter, and it will able to prescribe a medicine. Right? It's actually called explicit programming. So I'm actually writing a code to derive some desired outcome or desired output. But one of the main drawbacks of this is that if my business rule changes, because obviously technology is changing, healthcare industries, science is changing, everything is changing. So tomorrow, if some new diagnosis comes, new prescription comes, or a new set of tests comes, then I have to go and change my program. I have to do an explicit change my program, which becomes a very strenuous or a tedious process. And that is something which was one of the biggest drawbacks. But using the concept of expert systems, then came what is called machine learning. So lot of people, lot of researchers started writing algorithms which helped to derive patterns out of the data. Okay, and this patterns is all what I talked about is machine learning when I talk to you about the definition, right? So machine learning became very popular. It replaced the expert systems. And later, as the number of data increased, the number of input data increased, the complexity of the data increased, it was not possible for normal machine learning models to perform those operations. And that is where we came to a concept of neural networks. Okay, that's what we also call deep learning. And in deep learning, when you talk of neural network, this is again a separate section, how you have the concept of neurons in the brains, which is used for processing data. Similar concept came in software programming. So deep learning essentially started with what is called the artificial neural networks, which was used to basically process huge amount of various types of data. Then you have convolutional neural networks, which was typically used for capturing images, right? When I talk about capturing an image, I was just reading a very interesting article today on infotainment. If you know, nowadays, there's a lot of AI in vehicles, right? And there are cameras and sensors which will capture the movement of a person, the angle he is, whether he is drowsing or not, right? His position, which will help to basically capture his mood or is this, and based on that, there could be some alerts which could be generated. Okay, this is again which is working on a combination of IoT and ML. So I'm just saying, so that is very interesting. So you have sensors and images which is capturing the image of the person who is driving. Or even if you talk of a self-driving car, can somebody tell me how does a self-driving car work? How does a self-driving car work? We have heard lots about self-driving cars from Apple, from Google, from Tesla. How does it work? Anybody, please? How does this work? Okay. So essentially, let me just tell you. So when I'm talking about self-driving cars, if you have ever seen it, obviously we are not seeing it in India, and it will never be applicable in India, right? Considering the road situation here. But typically, it will have sensors. It will have cameras. It will have GPS. Okay. It will basically, those sensors will be able to detect objects. Cameras will be able to capture the lanes, or they capture the lane on which the traffic is going. Okay. And when you go through a particular path, so you have basically again machine learning algorithms which can track the path and tell you whether you're likely to fall out of the lane or you're following a right path. Okay. And so this is one example of how you use CNN, how do you capture images, right? And then you have RNN, recursive neural networks. Recursive neural networks is essentially used for pattern matching of sentences. So if I have a number of words in a sentence, I can use RNN to find out the next set of words in a sentence or the next set of sentences, next set of sentence based on the earlier sentence, right? So again, that I use something called the recursive neural networks. Then there is also something called the RPA, robotic process automation, where typically if you see in an industry, there's a business process. A business process could be, for example, if I'm a company, I'm selling to a customer a particular product. So typically what happens, if a customer likes my product, he will place a purchase order then to me as a company, then I will deliver that product for my stores to the customer. Once the customer acknowledges that he has received the product, then I will raise a bill or an invoice to the customer, and then my sales team or somebody from the company will follow for the payment, right? So typically this process is called order to cash process, right? From creating a purchase order to getting cash from the customer. And this process, if it is a repetitive sort of a process, then I could automate that using robotic process automation tools. Like you have tools like Prism, you have tools like Automation Anywhere, if you have heard of these tools. These are tools for automating a lot of business processes. So instead of person entering a transaction, the full transaction can be auto-populated, and finally the invoice can be generated on its own, or the bill can be generated. So these are the various advanced enhancements which has happened in AI space. Many of you may be aware of various machine learning algorithm applications, real-time applications. Well, I'm not going in a particular sequence, but for example, I can talk. The first example I can always think about is the Google search, because every day we do a Google search, right? Whenever I want to search something, I will do a Google search. The Google search has a machine learning algorithm in the background, and based on the type of searches that you have done, it will try to come out with some patterns, and it will try to predict some searches based on your past search, right? So that is a machine learning algorithm which works. Another classical example I can give you is recommendation engines. Like you go to LinkedIn and you are recommended a job. You go to Netflix, there is a movie recommendation. You go to Flipkart, you will see there is something, they will recommend you a product. All these are based on machine learning algorithms which are running in the background, which will predict based on your profile, it will recommend jobs, or based on your profile and past movies or products you have bought, or similar profiles of people who have brought products or movies, it will try to recommend some movies for you, right? So these all recommender engines are all examples of machine learning. Let's talk about in the healthcare. In the healthcare today, if I go to any doctor, today most of the advanced doctors, they have machine learning tools which will help them. So whenever a customer is there, a patient comes in, so based on the symptom, a doctor can get not an accurate, but more or less an accurate prediction about what could be the likely symptoms, likely issues he may have. Okay, what is the likely disease he may have, right? And one thing which I would like to emphasize all the time, no machine learning model can be 100% accurate. We are still yet to get into that 100%. But today in the industry, even if I achieve an accuracy or an efficiency of 85% plus or 90% plus, I can recommend that model to my client, because client also is told in advance that you can never, or he understands that ultimately a machine cannot replace a human being. Though human being also makes errors, but machine is surely likely to make errors. It can never be it can never be 100% accurate, right? So in medical diagnosis, a lot of emphasis is happening on machine learning tools. Then I talked about self-driving cars, again works on machine learning. Okay, whether it's from Apple or you have seen there's an Apple car which is going to come out in 2022, which auto parks itself, right? Depending on once you leave the car, the car will automatically, without the driver, park in the desired position, right? Then also comes examples in the finance section. I have, for example, want to detect if there is some abnormality in any transaction, if there's some fraud. Okay, so typically when I do some transactions, I do a transactions maybe say 50,000 a month or 60,000 a month. But suddenly, if my transaction volume becomes say 10 lakhs per month or 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs a month, then so using machine learning algorithms can be able to detect which are the abnormal ones, so that a banker can really find out and approach the customer and to find out why such an abnormal transaction has happened, right? Then you talk about Alexa or Google Echo or machine translations. All these are working through machine learning algorithms, right? So you have chatbot. Another example, classic example, you go to any site, you have a chatbot where you ask a question, it will give you an answer. So all these are all machine learning inbuilt algorithms which are running, right? So these are some of the examples of machine learning. Then, as I told you, in the automotive space, I talked to you about, in AI in automotive engines, right? Or even, for example, using if somebody, I have got AI inbuilt into my automotive, which can detect the behavior of a driver and it can sound alerts, either in form of an SMS or a sound. All the new brand of cars are coming out with a lot of AIs. Or even from a robotic perspective, right? All the major automotive manufacturers in Japan, they have car manufactured where hardly few people will have people, but most of them are run by robots. And these robots, which are all mechanical robots, while they are designed from a mechanical perspective, but they are trained using machine learning algorithms, right? So these are some of the examples. Also in manufacturing, if you want to, if you have an object which is defective, right, you can capture that image, and then if there are some new products which are manufactured, you can identify whether a defect is there or not there. I will cite you another example. I go to a 5-star hotel. This is what is called natural language processing. I go to a 5-star hotel, I eat a food there, and they will take some feedback. Okay, that feedback they can either take it on a form, or they will ask you to, they will enter it in a notepad or something. They'll ask you to enter in a notepad. Now that data is entered into a machine learning algorithm, and that machine learning algorithm can tell automatically whether that feedback is good or bad. It will automatically tell you. Okay, so there are various types of examples in machine learning. Anybody can give me some other examples which can be shared with the group? Anybody can share something which he or she knows, which can be shared with us in the group?
Health monitoring system.
Health monitoring system, in what way?
Suppose we are observing the blood pressure or glucose levels of the patients, and depending on the whatever the past history is there, then we can change the dose or something. And
Based on the past history, okay. So essentially you're talking of, so it comes as a part of the medical diagnosis. Okay, so you have a lot of patient data and be able to predict. Okay.
And
And
suppose there is history of the heart attack or something, then if in that trend, if patients records are going, then we can take a corrective actions.
okay, correct. Yeah, okay. So you have the data which is captured and you can derive some, can predict the output. Okay, fine. Anybody else?
So product recommendation in Amazon and Flipkart.
Yeah, that I've already mentioned. Yes, absolutely correct. Anything else?
Excuse me, sir. Machine learning can also be used in online education. Let's say few students, they are struggling, to get a concept. Okay, so we can take the help of machine learning. We can give the concept in our online teaching with the help of machine learning to unlock new discoveries or insight in a particular concept. So basically, basically machine learning, it can be used for transforming, you can say, education, fundamentally changing teaching, learning, and research.
Okay.
So in online education also, we can use the machine learning concept to make the, difficult concept understandable for the students. Because in online class, hardly there is any scope for physical interaction between the student and teacher.
Mhm.
So then that may help us, machine learning may help us to have a better interaction with our students by conducting some quizzes, by conducting some, you can say, you can say some case studies, discussion of case studies on online platform. In that way, it can be used.
Okay, fine. I'm
In
just trying to-
banks,
Yeah, please go ahead.
in
please.
banks, whether to give loan to a particular person or not, based on
Yeah, that's
some
an example of a credit scorecard which I mentioned here. So essentially, if you, depending on the type of your credit behavior, right? You buy something on credit card and how frequently you pay on time or don't pay on time. So that data can be captured and you can derive a pattern out of the human, the transaction that is made. And you should be able to derive a report which can decide when I go to a banker, how much of loan I should give to that particular person, right? So that's a credit scorecard. Yeah. So there could be many. Will just talk about one example, which was to one of the universities in Bhopal, where they had, in this COVID times. So you had a main gate where people used to enter, and there was a camera which was in front, in front of the gate. So whenever it used to encounter a scenario where the distance between two people are less than 2 meters, it used to trigger a sound in the speaker and used to tell please maintain that distance. Right? So that was again some machine learning algorithm because they should capture the image and that image then is to compare and see the distance and then is to automatically trigger an alarm. So there are countless examples.
So another example could be the Grammarly software. There is a software called Grammarly software. Any text we type or any thesis or any research paper we develop, we can give it as input in the Grammarly software. So
Okay.
it will show you the grammatical errors, possible grammatical errors in the document, and accordingly it will suggest you what is the right form of, what is the right form of different verbs, nouns, which have been used in a wrong way. So it will suggest you some of the options. I think that can be also an example of you can say machine learning, which can improve the writings of a researcher.
Okay, so that is using probably natural language processing. Yeah.
Yes. Sir.
Okay. Fine. So I think some of the AI analytic tools, the most prominent tools today is Python and R. There is also MATLAB, there is PyTorch, there are various other various platforms where I can write Python scripts. I can write scripts, machine learning scripts. There are companies like SAS and SPSS. There is companies like Google, which has got TensorFlow, which is a very popular machine learning library used in neural networks. And there are various interactive development environments like Jupyter Notebook, you have Google Colabs, you have Spider, and Spider is something which I'm going to show you today, which are various interactive development environments which are used to write, to interface, to create those Python scripts and execute those commands, right? So let us talk about the various machine learning types. Now, when you have an equation of y equal to mx plus c, which we all learn in algebra, what does this mean? It's a linear line. We all know this is a linear line, right? And what is the nature of y? What type of variable it is? Is it a categorical data? Is it a discrete data? Or is it a continuous data? What sort of variable is y? It is a continuous output. Absolutely correct. So because whenever your x changes, your y changes, right? But we know that it's a linear line where your m is the slope and the c is the y intersection, right? Now, when we talk on machine learning parlance, this equation is called regression. This equation is called regression. Okay, and few terms which I want to explain. I am sure many of you are aware. So y will call as an output. It is also called a dependent variable, and x is called an independent variable. It is also called a feature, and sometimes people also call it as a predictor. So these are various terms we use for the x, and m is called coefficient. Okay, and when you're having y equal to mx plus c, you know it's a straight line, and there is one independent variable. So this is an example of a univariate regression. So there is a single variable regression. Can somebody give me an example of a industry example of a univariate regression?
Age of a person and the blood pressure. We can predict what will be the blood pressure measurement of blood pressure if a person is of a certain age. If you have the historical data, if you have the data set along with us, then we can predict what would be the BP level of an individual having certain age. And second example could be again the same example, sales and advertising. If you have the sales data for last 10 years of a company, we can predict what will be the sales if the advertising budget is so and so for the next financial year, and vice versa, as well as vice versa. If we are spending this much amount in, in order to achieve a sales target of so and so, what should be our allocation for advertising budget?
So if you're looking at a sales, which is
Yes.
depending on advertising expenses,
Sir.
okay, typically this will not be a univariate regression. This will be a multivariate, because a sales will not only depend on advertising. It will depending on your R&D expenses, or it could depend on your promotional expenses, right? So it could be
Right, sir.
it could be based on multiple parameters. It cannot be just based on advertising in a real scenario, right? So what example you have mentioned is correct, but it will be more of a multivariate regression. So if you consider this, what do you think is which is the dependent variable?
Normally, sales depends on advertising expenses. We can take sales as dependent and advertising expenses as independent variable.
So sales becomes your dependent variable, while advertising expenses, R&D, promotional becomes your independent variable. Okay, and so this is an example of a multivariate regression. Or you can also take up a price of a house, which could depend on various parameters. Could be the size of the house, the number of bedrooms, the floor, the proximity to the mall. So these could be various examples or various parameters or features which could decide the price of the house. So the first case we talked about regression. Okay. Now the second scenario could happen where your y is having a discrete set of values. Irrespective of number of features you have or the number of independent variables you have in your data, you will have a discrete set of values as against continuous, which was in regression. When I say discrete, it could be having either value of 0 or 1, or maybe a value of 3 or 4 specific values. Or if I talk of images, whether this image is a particular red car of a red color or a blue color, or it's a particular animal, it could be different types of image identification, right? So these are all examples where you have the y, which is a discrete set of values, and this sort of data is called classification. This sort of data is called classification. Okay, so for example, if I know in a healthcare that I have got various features which will help me to diagnose whether a person is having a malignant cancer or a benign cancer. So my dependent variable, which is whether it's going to have a benign cancer or a malignant cancer, which is a discrete set of values, this is an example of a classification data set, right? So in both these cases, since the y is already either continuous or fixed, but you know the pattern out of the data. You know the pattern that is going to be either a straight line, or you are expecting a curve, or depending on the data you have, you know the exact pattern. And in the case of classification, you know that the y is always going to be discrete. It's not going to change, right? This is basically called a supervised model, right? So essentially, when I'm talking of supervised model, we are talking about regression, and we are talking about classification. Any questions at this point of time? Has anybody not understood? Can I get a quick yes or no on the screen?
No, sir, it's fine.
Okay. Fine. If it now the other type is unsupervised model. Now, what is an unsupervised model? By the definition of an unsupervised model, logical definition, I will say that in a unsupervised model, I don't know the pattern of the data in advance. So I've got a data from a client, and client is asking me to come up with a machine learning model. But as a person, I don't able to derive any pattern out of the data. Okay, so I need to derive that pattern, right? So that is an example of an unsupervised model. So let me take you a typical example of a mall. And in mall, you know, there are various shops where people come and buy. There are various types of shops. And the owner of the mall is interested to capture people with a certain demographic profile and to come out with a marketing strategy. So what he's capturing is trying to capture the age of the person, the salary of the person, and what I call is a spending power. The spending power means higher the spending power makes, suppose it is scale from 0 to 100. So when I say something which is close to 100 means he's a guy who is very lavish, who likes to spend, who likes to try out new things. Something which is between 40, 60, these are sort of conservative guys, right? And the guys who are below maybe 10, 20, these are the guys who are very thrifty guys. They don't spend much. Okay. So typically what I will do is I will capture the age I will capture the salary, whatever 10,000, and the spending power depends on how frequently he buys the product, right? So I capture all this information, say 80 and so on. So I capture all this information for all my customers. And then what I do is that I group these customers based on my requirement. Say if I want to capture high salary people and people who are spending a lot. So what I will do is I will group them. I will group them based on common attributes. So I will say group 1 is high salary, high spending power. And high could be defined as, you can define the range for high, right? Then group 2 would be high salary, low spending power. And the third one is group 3 would be low salary and low spending power, or high spending power, let's say high spending. And these are the guys who are typically buying a lot on credit, right? Low, okay. And so I group them, and this grouping is done based on my client requirement, and this grouping is done by me. It's not the algorithm or the model which does the grouping. I do the grouping based on the requirement of my client. And based on this grouping, I try to come out with a trend as to how many people or percentage falls in group 1, group 2, and group 3. And depending on that, I take a decision, or I come out with a marketing campaign. If I say that a group 3 people are pretty high, I can do some promotional campaign. If group 1 people are maybe the second highest, then I could come out with some new products. I could come out with some new products in the mall which people can buy. So depending on this grouping, I can decide what sort of marketing strategy I can adopt in the mall. And this grouping is called clustering. This grouping is called clustering. So this is an example of how you use clustering to create groups of common attributes and try to derive a pattern out of the data, right? The second type of unsupervised model is called learning association. And example of a learning association is your movie recommendations, your product recommendation, all these recommender engines. These are all examples of learning association, and they are classic examples of unsupervised model. Okay, so you have covered supervised model where you have regression classification. Unsupervised model, you talk about clustering and learning association. And the third type is what is called reinforcement learning. This is again a very complex algorithm, and essentially, just to give you, if you talk about the robots, or the robots or the self-driving cars, they work on the principle of reinforcement learning. And what is the reinforcement learning is, essentially, you learn continuously. So if I'm talking of a robot which is moving from one state to another state, it does take some action, and if that action is the desired action, it gets a reward. And if it doesn't take a desired action, it gets a penalty. So every time it goes on learning, it gets a desired action, it gets a reward. So your main objective is to how do you maximize the rewards. Can you please go on mute? Whoever is unmuted, please. Sir, can the admin mute the person who is
ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೇಶನ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಸಿದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಹೊರತು ಅದು ಮಾಡ್ಸಿದ್ರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಕ್ಯೂರ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಕ್ಯೂರ್ ಆಗೋ ಮೆಡಿಸಿನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು.
Sir, can somebody mute the person?
ಶಬ್ದ ಬರ್ತಿದೆ.
I think we need to eliminate this noise, please. Yeah, thank you. Let me go back. So we talked about, so when we're talking reinforcement learning, the objective here is how do you maximize the rewards and how do you minimize the penalty? Okay, so the movement of robots is a classic example of training using reinforcement learning. So it, for every move, it is learning continuously. That is called reinforcement learning, right? This is again a separate separate topic altogether, very interesting. Okay, and most of the models are always a hybrid model. So you will have a combination of classification, you'll have a combination of regression, you'll have a combination of reinforcement, right? So that could be, so when I'm talking about self-driving car, it will be a combination of classification model. For example, if I'm capturing the traffic lights, whether the light is red, green, or yellow, depending on that, I take a decision whether I have to start moving. That becomes a classification case. Or when I'm moving a particular lane, okay, that becomes a reinforcement learning. So whenever a self-driving car is trained, it is trained using reinforcement learning, and it makes sure that it is going in the right lane all the time, right? So these are all examples of. So in a nutshell, so there are three machine learning types. One is the reinforcement learning. Sorry, one is the supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Any questions at this point of time? Have you guys understood this concept of the machine learning types?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you want to really try out a lot of things, I always recommend people to install the Anaconda Navigator, which is an open source. You can get it from the internet. Once you install the Anaconda Navigator, you have the Jupyter Notebook, you have got the Python, that is the Spider, or you also have the Google, not the Google Colabs, the R Studio, which is again used for running R scripts, right? So there are various, this is a very common tool which is used to install all the latest environments where you can execute Python scripts, right? Now I'm going to explain you how the model works, and this is specific to supervised model, and please pay attention to this. If you understand this, and then you'll be able to appreciate whatever algorithms I'm going to execute subsequently. Okay. So typically what happens is that, suppose I have some data which I've got from my HR manager of a company, and the HR manager has given me data about the years of experience and salary of all his employees, and he wants to come out with a machine learning model which will predict this data accurately. Okay. So typically what happens that if I'm a data scientist, if I've got this data from the client, the first thing which I need to do is what is called the data preparation phase. Now, when I do data preparation phase, I need to essentially, this is a very important phase because many times the data is never correct. The data could be missing, the data could be duplicate, there could be outliers in the data. Outliers means which is not in the range. For example, I have a years of experience of 75, it doesn't make sense. Similarly, a salary of 1 rupee or 100 rupees also will not make sense, right? So I'll have to eliminate the outliers. I'll have to eliminate any missing data, any null values, because unless I pre-process my data or make it perfect data, I will not be able to get a proper model accuracy. So it's very, very important I pre-process the data, and typically in the industry, 60% or 65% of the time just goes in data preparation or pre-processing. And always remember, I mean, this is just, I mean, imagine you got millions of records, so you can do, so you have something called exploratory data analysis, where you can find out any outliers, you can find the mean, median, mode, the various statistical parameters, and find out the nature of the data. Okay. And one thing I will emphasize all of you, in data science or in ML, knowledge of statistics is very important. So you should, I urge all my students to brush up or to have a good sound knowledge on statistics. And I've seen people who have done their statistics, who have done their BSc stats or MSc stats, and they get into ML, they do pretty well because they already have the statistic knowledge background, right? So I do the data pre-processing steps, and obviously you have to ensure that since the ownership of the data is with the client, you have to make the client responsible to give you the correct data. You have to make the client responsible to give you the client. And once the data is corrected, we have to get the sign off of the data preparation phase from the client, that the client is also okay with the data that will be used for training the model, right? So data preparation phase is important. So once you do the data preparation phase or the pre-processing, then typically what I do, I split the data into training set and test set. Can anybody tell me why I need to create a test set?
For validation purpose and checking the
validate-
performance.
Model validation.
To do the model, absolutely correct. So what I do is I have the training data, which is used for training the model, and then the model will give me some sort of pattern. And using the test data, I will probably find out the accuracy or whether the model is behaving as per the expectation, right? So I have a separate set of test data. And typically the percentage distribution works is minimum 70% should be training, minimum. And maximum 30% should be test. So typically I will say 70-30, people use 80-20, 85-15, depending on the volume of data you have. And as we've been emphasizing that we need to have more training data, the better the model comes out with a pattern. Okay. So once you split the data into training and test set, what I do is I feed now out of this years of experience and salary, which is a dependent variable? Between years of experience and salary, which is a dependent variable?
I think salary.
Salary dependent and experience is independent.
Correct. Because your salary depends on years of experience and not the other way, right? So this is the independent variable and this is my dependent variable, right? Now I feed the training data to the model or the machine, and I will try to derive a pattern. That 70% of the data I feed into the machine, and based on that machine, and the machine will try to derive a correlation or a pattern between my independent variable and my dependent variable, right? And then what I do, I take the test data. What I do, I just take the independent variable or variables. You see, in supervised model, you can have n number of independent variables or features, as we saw that multivariate regression also, right? but you will always have one dependent variable. Your dependent variable cannot be multiple. It always has to be one, right? So the test data, the independent variables of the test data, I feed into the model, and the model will come. Since the model has already been trained based on the training data, I will do a predicted, I will come out with a predicted dependent variable or predicted salary. So what I've done here, I've taken the independent variables of the test data, fed into the model, and the model will predict the salary for those test data records, right? Then I compare the predicted test data with the actual test data. Predicted salary with the actual salary of the test data. So if my predicted salary and the actual salary is going to match, or it gives me an accuracy of more than 85-90%, for which there are formulas or there are metrics, then I can say this, I can propose this model to my HR manager, to my customer. Okay, so this is how you basically execute a machine learning script in Python or any language for a supervised model data. Is this clear to all of you? Can I get a quick yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So all of you have understood this workflow, very, very important. If you have this in mind, then whenever you execute in supervised data scripts, then you'll be able to appreciate what that program is doing, right? Okay. So if I talk of a project lifecycle, data science for any data science project. So in a project data science team, you will have one of the most important role you need to have is a business analyst. And a business analyst is a person who comes from that domain, whether it's a HR domain, CPG domain, manufacturing, retail, whatever. So you need to have a person who understands the data, right? So he's a business analyst who understands the business, who will be able to talk to the client in the business language. And then once you have the business understanding, then you have people, the technical team, who will be explained about the nature of the data and what is the expectation from the client. And then the technical team will decide which models will be appropriate for this set of data, depending on the experience, right? So you will have a business analyst, you have a project team, will have a project manager and some team members under them. So this portion, data collection, data preparation, exploratory data analysis, this becomes a part of your data preparation phase or data pre-processing phase. Once you do this, where you take care of null data, you take care of duplicate data, you take care of outliers or whatever, wherever there is data is missing, always remember the last option we should do is to delete any data. We should try avoiding deleting any data, because that will reduce your number of records for training or testing. And always remember, if I have to delete any data, again, I have to consult my client, because the ownership of the data lies with the client and not you as a data scientist, right? So once this is done, which as I said takes 65 to 70% of the time, then I do the modeling where I train the model. Then I do the model evaluation where I test the model. And finally, I deploy the model at the client location. So that for any new set of data, the client does not have, that uses the model. For example, if a person he has to join a company, that company, so based on the years of experience he has, the model can tell the salary. And based on that, the offer letter can be given to the client. Okay. So this is typically how we execute a project in data science. Now we will go to some of the data pre-processing steps. Now, this is something which we have to do in any programming. And again, if there are people with non-technical background, don't worry about it. I'm not going to explain you what is each and code doing here, but I will just explain you what the function is going to do, what is finally going to be the output. So just focus on the outcome, not on the code which has been written. If people are technical, that's fine, but who are not technical also, that is fine. So yeah, don't worry about that. So there are a few steps which we do as a part of data pre-processing. One is I import few libraries. Now here I'm talking of Python as a language. So I'm importing few libraries which are used by me to write my script. So these libraries are basically containing various functions which I need to execute. Then I import my data set. So whatever input data I have, which comprises my independent and dependent variables, I'll have to read it into my program, right? So I have what is called the importing the data set. And while I import the data set, after importing the data set, I'll have to identify which are my independent variables and which is my dependent variable. Which are my independent variable or variables and which is my dependent variable, right? Then as part of data pre-processing, again, if I have some missing data, I need to take care of that missing data. I need to fill up that missing data, right? Then I do what is called data categorization. Now, data categorization is another, I'll come to that. Then I will speak to you about splitting the data into a training set and a test set. And finally, we will also talk about feature scaling. So these are all the data pre-processing steps before we get into the modeling phase of Python. Before you get to the modeling phase, not Python, before you get into the modeling phase. So as part of data pre-processing, there are three. Can you please go on mute? Thank you. So when you are importing libraries, there are three important libraries which are used. One is the NumPy, one is the Matplotlib, which is mainly used for drawing graphs, and third is the Pandas, which is used for reading a data set or input data into your program. Okay. Then I import my data set. Importing my data set means I read the data using the Pandas. I identify which is my independent variable, which is X, and which is my dependent variable, which is Y. So independent variable could be one or many. Dependent variable will always be one. Okay. So let me show you this in Python. So in Spider, this is my Spider interface, and this is where I'm going to execute my script. So any Python script has a suffix of .py. Okay. Then I have this screen where I have a help, where I can do help on, if I get stuck somewhere, I can do some help. Variable explorer are output of any program, output of whatever line I'm executing. Then I can see the output here. And the files is the files which are present in this particular folder. So I can browse to a particular folder and then I can run, I can see the files in this folder. And here there is a file called data preprocessing template.py, which is a Python script, so which I open here. Okay. Now this data is called data.csv. Now what is this data.csv? Let me open this. Now this data.csv has got country, age, salary, and a field called purchase. So I'm an automotive company and I want to know, based on the profile of the individual, I capture his country, resides, the age and salary, whether he is likely to buy a brand of car. And I capture all this data because the person is going to the internet. I capture this data and I want to come out with a model. I want to come out with a model where he approaches me as a data scientist to predict the behavior of a person which will decide that he's likely to buy a car or not going to buy a car. If this is being the example, what sort of data is this? Is this a regression data or is this a classification data?
Classification.
Classification, because the answer is yes or no.
So which is your independent variable?
Three, country, age, salary.
Good. So your country, age, salary becomes your independent variables, and purchase, yes or no, is the dependent variable. And since the dependent variable is discrete, it's called a classification data. Perfect. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first import my three libraries. So I'm going to execute here, and I will see output here, which is the console. Just see, I could have executed the full script together, or I could do line by line. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to execute line by line. So let's execute one by one. So I will import one library. I select the line. I select the line and I execute. I import my second library and I import my third library. Now I'm importing my data set, and I can see my data set under Variable Explorer. You will see the data set here, and this is how my data looks. So I have got country, age, salary, and purchases. Do you see some abnormality in this data? Is there any problem with this data?
Yes, two NaN are there.
So what do I? So what do I do?
Those values can be removed or replaced by something, a high value or something.
So what will you do as a? What will you first do as a data scientist?
Better I will set these values to some values that those will not be used in this table. So in like a flag what we do in our program. I think.
See, you have to have the right values. Do you agree? If you don't have the right values, the model will give you incorrect results.
True.
So how do you ensure?
Better to remove those lines.
And as again I told you, that is the last option. That is the last option. So what will I do first?
Average value, can we put average value?
Is that the first thing I will do as a data scientist?
Sir, we should first, excuse me, sir, we should first normalize the data before you go for further processing it. Data normalization should be the first step.
Data normalization, in the sense you can find out the mean, median, you can find out outliers, you can find out the interquartile range. That's all you can do. But all this missing values, what you'll do? Who is the owner of the data?
The client.
Yes, so you have to go back to the client. The first and important thing is you have to go back to the client. You just can't make any assumptions and go ahead. Ownership of the data is always with the client, and you have to ensure as a data scientist that you get the right data from the client. So you have to go to the client, say, hey client, I don't have this data, please provide me this data. I cannot work with this data, or should I delete this data? Tell me. Okay, so it is up to the client to decide. We cannot take unilateral decisions as a data scientist, at least at this stage, data preparation phase, right? So typically what I will do is I will go to the client, tell him that I don't have these values, please provide me. So client will be happy to give you those values. That is number one. If the client says that I don't have the values, and the client says you make your own assumptions, then I can make my own assumptions. I can I can write a function based on the trend of the data. I can write a function which will be able to derive a proper accurate data, not very accurate, but close to accurate. Or I could maybe, as somebody said, average. Okay, I can use a mean function to replace the missing value with the mean of the age and mean of the salary. But again, whatever I'm doing, whatever function I'm writing, I need to get the concurrence of the client, because if the client doesn't sign the data preparation phase, you will get stuck. You cannot do modeling, you cannot do evaluation, you cannot do deployment. So you need to make sure the data preparation phase is done in close collaboration with your client. Okay. Now, imagine this scenario, as someone rightly said, okay, the client doesn't have any information. He says that you make your own assumptions. So I make my own assumptions where I say I will calculate the mean. Again, I will get the concurrence of the client for that. And then if the client says, okay, go ahead, then what I will do, I will replace the average. So what I'm doing here, I'm calculating the mean. So I could have replaced it by the mean. I could have replaced by any other statistical function which is appropriate for this set of data. Okay, sorry, before that, I need to first identify which is my independent variable and which is my dependent variable. So X is my independent variable, which has got country, age, and salary. And then you have the independent variable. Y is already there. Y. So it is have no, yes or no. Okay. And then once I have identified independent variable, I now take care of the missing function. So if I use this, I'm not going to the code, just see the output. If I see the value of X, now see the missing values I've got filled up by the average of the salary and the average of the age, or the age and salary. So this is how you use one function to take care of missing data. That there could be various scenarios. So depending on the scenario, you can write your own function and to populate the data. But as I said, you need to have the concurrence of the client at each stage. Right? Any questions on the data missing data part? And here I will not be able to toggle much, so please unmute and speak to save time. I will share the PPT tomorrow. Don't worry about it. So let's so this missing data is taken care. Any questions? Okay. Now the next part. Can I take another 10 minutes, sir? Is that okay? 11:10, 11:15. Is that okay? Who is the admin here? Anybody is there from the institute? Okay, so let me finish up the data pre-processing stage, and then I'll go ahead. Then we'll stop. Now the next thing that I want to talk to you about is, if I see this data, now there is a text field called country, and please note that machine learning algorithms don't understand text. It doesn't understand text. So if I have to use a field for my analysis, all my fields have to be numeric. So what I need to do is I need to convert this text field into a number or a numeric format. And this process of converting it into a numeric format is called data categorization. So in this case, what I have is that, suppose I have got 3 countries, France, Germany, and India, in my data. Overall, I've got 3 unique countries in my set of data. So what I do is, internally, I will convert this into 0. I will convert this into 1. I will create serial numbers. Serially, I will order it. this serial number ordering, I mean, if there are 5 countries, I have 0 to 4. If there are 7 countries, I have 0 to 6 and so on. And then what I will do, I'll create an array of 3 elements. Why 3 elements? Because there are 3 unique countries and the array will be like this. So if it is France, it will be 1, 0, 0. If it is Germany, it is 0, 1, 0. And if it is India, it will be 0, 0, 1. So your any elements will have one value which is equal to 1, which denotes that the value exists, and 0 means the value does not exist, right? So there are functions available in Python language which does this. Now you don't have to internally bother how this 0, 1, 2 is created or how this array is created. I'm just trying to explain you the process, but there are programs which automatically does this. So there is a program called label encoder or a function which does this, and there's a function called one hot encoder which does this function. Now let us see this in actually running so you can appreciate. So what I do is I go back to my script. Now I have this country data, right? So first I will just run the label encoder, see what happens. Now if I see the value of X, now the X has got replaced by an serial numbers 0, 1 and 2. You see the country has got replaced by a serial number. And once I do the one hot encoder, and now if I see the value of X, now you will see that the X has got replaced by 3 elements because there are 3 unique values, 1, 0, 0 and so on. So initially there were three features for my independent variable. Now I've got 5 columns. This 5 is number of columns and 10 is the number of rows, and y is 10 comma, since there is nothing, why nothing is mentioned, since by default dependent variable will always be 1 column, so you don't have to explicitly write 1. Okay, so you just write 10 comma. So this is how you take care of data categorization. Is this clear to all of you? Have you guys understood what is data categorization?
Sir, I have one question. Is it compulsory to do one hot encoding after labeling? Can't we put like 0, 1, 2 labels are there now, so that are in one column. So is it compulsory to do one hot encoding after the labeling?
If there are only 2 values, say yes or no, like this classical case. This classical case, here it is 0 and no. Here I can do just the label encoder because it has got only 2 values, 0 and 1. Okay, but if there are more than 2 values, then you need to convert into you need to use one hot encoder because you need to create that array.
Okay.
So you cannot have, see 0, 1 to you, then how will you build the array? 0, 1, 2 will not work. It has to have one, it has to have a binary value. So either 0 or 1.
Okay.
So you should either have 1, which is mean the value exists, or 0, the value does not exist.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay, so now if I come back to this, if I extend to what you are saying, now if I have got this 0, my purchase is yes or no, I need to convert this also using label encoder only. I don't have to do one hot encoder because I need only, it is only one single value. So if I do this y, now the y value, which was yes or no, is now 0 and 1. Okay, so whenever there's, if it's just a binary value 0 only for yes or no, for example, then I can just use label encoder. But there are multiple values like the states or the countries, or could be some text fields which has got different range, different values. Then I could build an array. of variables, and this array is called dummy variables in machine learning. They are called the dummy variables, right? So this is called, I will say this is called, it creates dummy variables. So these three variables are called dummy variables. Is this clear to all? The data categorization? Any doubts?
It is clear.
Okay. Now, once you have done the data categorization, the next thing I will do is I will split my data into training set and test. So, as I said, it could be typically more 70% or above for the training and 30% up to 30% test set. Now, here I'm using the command where I see something 0.2, which means I've got 80. I will split this data into 80% training and 20% test. Okay, and when I split the data, I split the data into 4 variables: X test, X train, Y test, and Y train. So training set, independent and dependent variable, test set, independent and dependent. Now see what happens. I'll show you here. If I execute this line, see, earlier X was 10.5. Now X test becomes 2.5, X test becomes 8.5, Y test becomes 2, and Y train becomes 8. So you have got 2 records of test set and 8 records of training set. Okay, so this basically is your splitting. And the last and the most important step is what is called feature scaling. And feature scaling is very important, again, because machine learning algorithms, it is important we do feature scaling when there are a lot of numeric values. So example, when I talk about these years of experience and salary, my years of experience could typically vary between 1 to say 30 years. I work from 21 to 60, say 39, 40 years. Just an example. And my salary could be 10,000 per month to even maybe 1 crore a month. It could be 10,000 to 1 crore. Now, if a machine learning algorithm wants to do a correlation between these variables, it will be difficult to correlate in this case because both of these are in different scales. So this has got a scale of 1 to 40, but the scale here becomes 10,000 to 1 crore, which is in a very different scale. So what machine learning algorithms recommend, or machine learning best practices, is that you need to bring all such values to a common base scale. And this process of converting or bringing it to a common base scale is called feature scaling. So if I go to this presentation, let me sharing this to presentation, don't worry about that. So in feature scaling, there are 2 methods we use. One is called the standardization and one is called the normalization. So standardization, it converts your values to something using this formula, x minus mean x divided by standard deviation. And the x norm will be your x minus mean x divided by max x minus mean x. So what it does is, it using these functions, it brings this value to a very small value, which will be typically between -1 or 1 or -2 or 2. Okay, and then again, you will be wondering how does this mapping happens. You don't have to bother as a developer. These functions automatically does the mapping. So you don't have to really bother. But the idea here is to convert such values to a smaller value, which is then inputted to your machine learning model. Okay, so we use 2 types of functions. One is either called the standard scaler, or we call here as the mean max scaler. And see what happens. Now if I execute this, and now I will execute this on X train and X test, because my X train and X test has got age and salary, which are in different scales. So if I see my X train, These are my 8 records of explain, and these are my 2 records of xtest, right? Now, when I can use any of these functions. I can use min-max scalar or standard scalar, but many of the times I've seen people use standard scalar, but you can use any of the two. Let's, for example, use a standard scalar and execute this function. Now, see what happens to the value of x train. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I go to x train. The value has become like 2.64, 0.774, 0.263, and so on. Similarly, if I do x test, sorry, x underscore test, please note that variables are case sensitive. So x and y, small x, capital X, small y, capital Y has got different meanings, right? Now see x test, again, it has got small values. So using this feature scaling, you have brought this down to one base scale using the standard scalar or the min-max scalar, which are the standardization and the normalization functions. And these are the functions which are used for feature scale. So this completes your entire, yeah.
Excuse me, sir. So
Yeah.
which scaling we will use? Is there any rule?
No, there is no rule. You can use any of the two.
Okay.
You can use standard scalar or you can use min-max. There's no problem.
Both
Okay.
means it may affect the
Yeah,
result,
both are
like final
equal.
accuracy or classification.
No,
It will not
doesn't.
affect the final result.
Final result, it will not. There's not much of a difference. No.
Okay.
It should not.
Okay, sir.
It should not make. These are two different functions, but the objective is the same. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So this essentially covers your entire data preprocessing steps, that are importing libraries, importing data sets, identifying independent variables, taking care of any missing data for preprocessing. Then we do the data categorization, splitting the data, and finally feature scale. And these are the important steps which we need to do before we get into modeling. Okay. So I end my session here. That tomorrow we will cover the machine learning models for regression and classification. That is part of the supervised model. Same time. Any questions before we wind up for the day?
Sir, after tomorrow's session, can we get this Python program?
Yes, I will give you. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Have you guys understood? Is there something you are taking with you as a learning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as we go through tomorrow, we will come through more interesting algorithms and data sets, and we will go through that tomorrow as well. If there are no questions, we wind up. Sir, you want to close? You want to have a closing remarks? There's nobody from the institute. Anybody from the institute? There's nobody from the institute. Okay. Okay, guys. Then I'll wind up the session. We'll meet tomorrow at 9:30. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah. I was waiting for you. Yeah.
Okay, participants, let us thank sir for this wonderful session. My scholars means they are just intimating me that it was a very useful session to them, and also I hope all the participants must have enjoyed, and this session will be very much useful to them as well. And we'll be having sir again tomorrow.
Same time.
First session. So the materials will be sent to you, and if you have any queries, you can start tomorrow's session with your queries. Then you can move ahead. Okay, sir.
So I will share the PPT after tomorrow.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay.
I'll share it up. But
Okay.
I'm sure.
Thank you, sir. We will meet again tomorrow at
Okay.
9:30 a.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Participants, you please join for the next session at 11:20.